All right, we're live. Hello. We're talking blood sugar balance today. And this is a super important topic that a lot of times gets overlooked in our journey for hormone health, in our journey for hormone balance, in our journey for fat loss. A lot of times we bypass blood sugar balance. So that's what I'm going to dive into today, because a lot of times people are having symptoms of their blood sugar not being balanced and they don't realize that's what's actually going on. So did you know things like insomnia, anxiety, hot flashes, night sweats, even wrinkles, troubles concentrating, inflammation, problems and irregularities with your period, those can all be dialed back to blood sugar imbalances in your body. So when I'm talking about blood sugar imbalances, and my background is a pharmacist. My background is a pharmacist and further that with functional medicine. So when we talk about blood sugar balance, a lot of people first line will go to the doctors and have their blood sugar test. And what is usually being tested is your A1C level, which is a 3-month average of what your blood sugar has been. So we'll go to the doctor, your A1C is fine because the average over a 3-month period is fine, but that doesn't tell us what's happening in the day-to-day, right? You can have really high highs, you can have really low lows, and on average, it's balancing out to like typical numbers. So a lot of people, and especially a lot of women, are experiencing blood sugar swings and blood sugar spikes and blood sugar crashes. And that's going on for years, but the overall average is normal. So that's why it's never really been talked about as much, because your doctor is checking your A1C and it's normal and it's fine. So there's nothing for them to talk about. But if you're having some of those symptoms I listed, the anxiety, the hot flashes, the troubles focusing and talking, it's like, man, what is going on with my blood sugar? So when we eat pretty much anything other than fat, our blood sugar is going to be elevated. That's just a natural consequence of taking food, energy into our body breaking it down. Even protein will raise your blood sugar slightly. What we really want to manage and be in control of and be mindful of is avoiding putting ourselves in situations where we have blood sugar spikes. Because if we can avoid the blood sugar spike, that's really the root of a lot of our hormonal issues. So we want to avoid the blood sugar spike, because a lot of us after end up having a blood sugar crash. Like I, for one, am very susceptible to the blood sugar spike and then the blood sugar crash. The issue for women is that, well, just not even just women, is just genetically and evolutionary, we are designed to store sugar. And it's a vicious cycle. It just is like one thing feeds the other. So when our body has sugar, it wants to store it because that is our best, quickest form of energy. Our body runs on sugar or it runs on fat. And if there's a lot of sugar, there's too much sugar, the body's going to store that and hang on to that to be like, you know what, we just might need this later. So we're just going to hang on to that. And what it will do is it will first fill up the liver stores and will fill up the muscle stores. Okay. Remember that, because that will come in important later. And then once those stores are filled, guess where that sugar gets stored? It gets stored as fat and often around the belly, And then that belly fat particularly releases estrogen. It will release more estrogen. So we have blood sugar. I haven't talked about insulin yet. So we know from too much sugar, it will cause excess fat storage. And that's going to cause a hormonal issue for women, both women and men, right? Again, there's no separation. We just experience things differently. So yes, the women, we're going to have extra estrogen, which is going to lead to like an estrogen dominance scenario. And if you're interested in like what the implications of that, I did a masterclass similar to this a few weeks ago on body types, and I talked about estrogen dominance in that scenario. So when we have sugar and our blood sugar spikes, our pancreas releases insulin to get that blood sugar down. Insulin's job is to take that sugar and bring it into the cells where it can actually do something. If we have more insulin over time, and if we have more sugar over time, that our body's really, that's ideally being handled and ideally being utilized properly, that's where it's just gonna like, all right, we're just gonna store it as fat. Over time, we become insulin resistant, which makes that our blood sugar is going to go higher, and it's not being pulled into the cells that can actually use that energy, that can actually use that sugar and pull it out of the bloodstream and use it into muscles. One other thing I forgot to mention is like wrinkles. Wrinkles are linked to like higher blood sugar levels. Did you know that, right? Wrinkles. So that's very, very important. All right. When we have high insulin levels, I'm just looking at my notes over here because I made lots of notes for this mini masterclass. So if we have higher insulin levels, this dials back to blood sugar. So this is like more like the why, and I'm going to give you some helpful tips to like what you can do today to do what you can to manage blood sugar, because that it's in your control, right? You have control over this. And I just want to first lay the picture of like how important it is. So if we have higher than average insulin levels, women, if you have ovaries, it's going to stimulate them to make more testosterone. That is going to lower sex hormone binding globulin, which is going to cause an even further dump of estrogen into the body. And so then we're going to have more estrogen in relation to progesterone, and then we're going to further feed that estrogen dominant cycle. And so this is how one hormone imbalance leads to another. And I'm not specifically talking about diabetes in this video, but blood sugar, insulin, diabetes is a hormone imbalance issue, right? Diabetes is a hormone balance issue. And I'm all about talking about hormone imbalances and metabolism, because it all interplays. So we can't ignore one thing. We can't ignore the menopausal symptoms. We can't ignore the perimenopausal symptoms and just talk about estrogen, progesterone with ignoring blood sugar. That is the basis of it. And when we look at a lot of symptoms that women experience perimenopausal years and menopause, a lot of them overlap with symptoms of either high or low blood sugar. So again, it's like, okay, well, what is it? Is it that my estrogen and progesterone are dropping naturally because of this transition period in my life? Or is it the blood sugar that's running the show? And usually it's both. So we can't talk about one and completely ignore the other. When our testosterone levels are higher, that's when women will experience acne, right? Maybe you've experienced acne your whole adult life, or maybe you didn't. And then it's like, wow, why do I have more acne now than I did as a teenager? That's a hormone imbalance issue, especially if it's like on the lower chin, ladies, or on the back, often linked to higher levels of testosterone. That can also lead to more mood swings, right? Higher testosterone, more mood swings, low blood sugar, mood swings, swinging hormone balances, hormones like estrogen and progesterone, mood swings, right? So it's just like, how do I know which is the exact one? Well, they all work together. So the blood sugar balance is such a key foundational piece, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. And again, to make the situation even, I don't want to say worse, but that's just the way it goes. When we have higher levels of testosterone gets broken down, gets converted by DHT to estrogen in our body. Testosterone gets aromatized into estrogen. So higher levels of testosterone, again, will precipitate higher levels of estrogen. And if our levels are already clogged and backed up, usually we've exceeded the capacity, the natural detox capacity of our liver to clear the excess estrogen out. And that's where we start getting into trouble. And that's where our body just keeps hanging on to the fats. And then we've got all this extra visceral fat that's just making more estrogen. And then we're running into the issues downstream of the estrogen dependent cancers and then the effects that come with that we have mentioned. So what do we do about blood sugar? What do we do about blood sugar? So I just want you to simplify it. If you have hormone issues, if you have fat that you can't burn, let's look at blood sugar control, because that's an action you can take right now. That's an action you can take right now today. How can I control my blood sugar? How can I keep my blood sugar stabilized. And so some very important things that you can do. And so number one is don't drink sugar. Don't drink sugar. Don't drink your calories, especially if you want to lose fat, right? Especially if a goal of yours is to lose fat. Again, fat loss and weight loss are kind of two different things that we won't tease apart in this issue. But if you want to lose fat, then you shouldn't be drinking calories. Okay, you shouldn't be drinking calories. One of the reasons is if we're having sugar in the forms of drinks. Now I'm specifically talking like fruit juices and sodas and sugar in your coffee and tea. And especially if it's something like a smoothie that's just really high sugar content, because it's taken in a liquid form, it kind of bypasses our natural shut off mechanism for appetite control. So we actually end up typically eating more. And sometimes people we're making we think we're making a healthful decision of, I'm going to start drinking all this fruit juice. I'm going to start juicing, or I'm going to start drinking all these fruit smoothies. Again, you might be doing it for great reason, knowing that it's loaded with vitamins and it's loaded with minerals and these are healthy things. But if we're pumping a lot of like liquid sugars in our body, it doesn't fill up our stomach the same way. Our stomach's like, hey, this is already digested, and it just empties the stomach, so our stomach doesn't stay full, and then it goes through the digestive system faster, so it bypasses that mechanism, like, hey, we've had enough food, we need to slow it down. So that's like number one, is assess and audit, what are you drinking calories, right? So water, herbal teas, coffee without cream and sugar in it, all fine. Those are all things there's things you can do to flavor your water, not sweeten it, but flavor your water to make it palatable. If you're someone's like, hey, I just don't like water, there's ways around that. So assess, am I drinking my calories? That intervention alone, if you can identify something like that, will make a huge difference. We want to talk about blood sugar control when we're eating. I did a video on glycemic load and glycemic index a couple of weeks ago, so you can refer back to that. It's up on my YouTube channel if you want to learn more about that. But when you go to have your meals, let's look at, is it a balanced meal? And start with breakfast. If you're a breakfast eater, and again, intermittent fasting, whole nother topic of conversation, but if you're a breakfast eater, aim to start your breakfast with protein, healthy fat, and fiber. Protein, healthy fat, and fiber. And a lot of our typical conventional breakfasts that we grew up with or that are readily served anywhere are just carbs. And so then we're starting the day with all of these carbohydrates with nothing else to it. So why do we focus on the protein and the fiber and the fat? Well, if you have protein and fat and fiber, that slows down the carbohydrates, the sugar from the food that you're eating from getting into your bloodstream. It will still get into your bloodstream, but it happens slower. So we can avoid that blood sugar spike. And that's what we really want, right? This is why carbs aren't the devil. Carbs aren't bad. We need them. What we want to do is avoid that blood sugar spike. So how do we do that? When we're having a meal that has a little more carbohydrates, we need to be pairing it with protein, with healthy fats, making sure there's a lot of fiber at that meal, that we're getting the nutrition that we need overall, and we're not having a blood sugar spike. So we need the carbohydrates, but what we don't want is the blood sugar spike. We want blood sugar control. So that's something you can do and audit at your very next meal. Whether it's lunchtime here, so I'm going to be going into lunch after. And what did you have for breakfast? Give that a quick audit. What are you having for lunch? What are you having for dinner? Is this meal set up for having stable blood sugar after that meal, so I don't have a blood sugar spike after that meal? And if you can start your day with breakfast, the powerful thing about nailing a really good breakfast is that most of us have kind of like the same 2 or 3 breakfasts we eat on a regular basis, right? Like whatever you had for breakfast this morning, you've probably had it 3 times this week. So if you nail down a breakfast that you like and enjoy and is built around stabilizing your blood sugar levels and supporting your blood sugar levels throughout the day, okay, good, done, check, get that under control, and then you just repeat it. So starting with, again, the focus is, does this meal have a good source of protein? Does this meal have a source of healthy fat? And is there a source of fiber in it? If you can answer yes, 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 okay, awesome. And then whether you're having fruit or toast or cereal, like whatever it is, oatmeal, like that almost becomes irrelevant if you know it's got those other three components to it. So starting with breakfast is a must do. The next thing is physical activity. Remember, I mentioned when sugar and carbohydrates go in, gets converted to sugar, blood sugar goes up, our body looks for places to use it. And the body knows like, okay, is my liver glycogen stores full? Most of us it's full, right? Unless you're doing endurance sports. Usually our glycogen stores in our liver is full. So then it's going to like look at the muscles. And so our muscles are our most metabolically active tissue. And this is, again, something you can do today to help promote stable blood sugar levels. So physical activity uses those muscles. When we use our muscles, it needs energy. And it's going to pull the sugar out of our bloodstream, which is what we want. We want to pull it out of the bloodstream into the muscles where it can be used and not be floating around where the body's like, oh, I've got lots of sugar, I'm going to store it as fat. So physical activity, that can be as simple as a 10-minute walk after each meal. Now, I fully recommend that you walk 30 minutes every day. If that's not possible for you, and it's not for many people watching this for a variety of reasons, it's start where you are at. Start with what you can and think physical activity, think muscle movement. So there's things you can do sitting in your chair. There's even things I can do while I'm working at my desk that keep my muscles moving, keeps my muscles pulling that energy in and giving it a place to go, right? This is a quick segue because tomorrow's masterclass is all about energy and vitality. And so if you want to learn more, make sure you sign up for that because I'm going to be talking about things like that. So there's actually a great study that shows that. So like if you're at your desk, so if you're sitting down, right, if you do calf raises, right, so we think of like doing calf raises like against a wall, like just like standing up on your toes. And I'm doing it right now as I'm sitting. You can't even tell, maybe because, well, my shoulders are moving, so you can maybe tell. And I told you what I was doing. But just doing calf raises several times throughout the day is helpful for blood sugar levels and calorie usage for your body, energy usage in your body. So even if you're sitting at your desk for 8 to 10 hours and you're like, yeah, I don't got time for a 10-minute walk after lunch, Natalie, that sounds great, but realistically that's not happening. Well, then after sorry, I just saw something popped up on my screen. After lunch, then do some calf raises, right? If you're on a Zoom meeting, you're on a Google Meet, or your Microsoft Teams meeting, you can be sitting, have your camera on and be doing calf raises, right? So physical movement, ideally you should be walking 30 minutes a day or something equivalent to that, right? Maybe, again, equivalent, whatever that is for you, the physical activity. And it's very powerful if you do it right after a meal, but any time of day is helpful. Before a meal is helpful as well, right? So don't think that, oh, I missed going for a 10-minute walk after breakfast, because that's not feasible for everybody. You think like, okay, I missed the boat, I screwed it up for the day. That's a goal and that's a target. I'd love for you to work to it, but it's okay to be broken down into smaller chunks, like 10 minutes at a time, finding where it fits in your day, and then just bringing that awareness. Like physical activity absolutely makes a difference. So if this is a big one for, if I know I have, usually it's supper, if it's a supper that's going to have more carbohydrates than I would typically have, whether it's more potatoes or more rice or bread, or we're having a birthday celebration and there's cake, that's where I definitely try to go for a walk after, especially I've done that. And I've had it happen in, where it's dark or it's the middle of winter. I will just walk around my house. And, it's not really the scope of this, but if you want to know more about it, a great tool is a continuous blood glucose monitor. So there's Freestyle Libre, there's others available. The great thing in Canada, you can just go to a pharmacy and get one, or you can order it online. The US, you need a prescription for it. So there's some hoops to jump through to get it. But if you suspect that you've got blood sugar balancing issues and you suspect that might be a thing, especially if you're like waking up in the night and nothing else seems to make sense, it's worth getting one. Like they're not cheap, like they're about $100, give or take, but the information is super valuable. So I remember I had one on for a bit because this is what I do. I figure out what's going on. So I had one on and had dinner and my blood sugar like spiked after. I was like, what? And so, but it was like dark and in the evening. So I just started walking around the house, right? I was just like, all right, I know I just got to walk. I went up and down the stairs a couple times. I just moved my body for 10 minutes, did some like kind of, I can't even call it exercises, but I just moved my body for 10 minutes, right? So it can be dancing. And very quickly, I saw that blood sugar start to come back down. And so I know that's a very effective strategy is like when you know you've had a meal with more with higher carbohydrates, which is, again, maybe outside of like what I would normally have for a meal, like, man, I need to be proactive about this. So move your body for 10 minutes. I've already talked about balanced meals, specifically about breakfast. So these are our do's. We're going to make sure if we're eating breakfast, protein, fat, and fiber is our focus. We're going to make sure we're doing physical activity on a regular basis. Balanced meals, right? Again, so meals like, is there a source of protein at this meal? Is there a lot of fiber at this meal, which usually we mean vegetables, right? Is there some healthy fat at this meal as well? Once you start leading with those things, you're going to be satisfied and stay fuller longer, which is very helpful. And it helps minimize the blood sugar spike after a meal. So eating fresh fiber first. So just saying, I'll drop, you'll hear me say it time to time, is fresh fiber first. So starting your meal with some vegetables, right? And fresh, that can be cooked too, right? But starting your meal with a salad or even some mini carrots or just having a couple bites of whatever vegetables that you're serving, having that first makes a difference in blood sugar control. So having your vegetable as your starter and then moving on to your carbohydrate will minimize that blood sugar spike, which is super awesome. We need to talk about stress management for a minute because we're talking about blood sugar control and blood sugar balance overall. Stress, cortisol is our main stress hormone, and cortisol causes blood sugar to be higher. Because under times of stress, our body is keeping the blood sugar available to us because we feel we need to do something, which is why a lot of times when we're stressed, we get shaky because the cortisol is higher and it's keeping the blood sugar at the ready. So it's like we need to go and do something. So that's the message, that's the hormonal message that we're getting, our body's getting when we are stressed. And it keeps blood sugar levels higher than our optimal. Again, it might not be crazy high, but a little higher than would otherwise be. And then that's also going to further contribute to higher insulin levels and insulin resistant downstream. So we need to also manage stress. You need to manage stress, whatever that means for you. We need to manage stress to keep cortisol levels lower. So here's a quick breath technique. And I'm going to be sharing a really cool exercise tomorrow on tomorrow's masterclass. And it's not this one. So you should come to the masterclass too. So anytime, you can do this anytime during the day, whether you're stressed or not, it's a great reset. Because a lot of times we're going, and we don't actually realize like, yeah, we're in a stress state because it's just become our normal state. But until we get that break and literally take that breath, we're like, oh. So here's something called the 4-7-8 breath. So the 4-7-8 breath is breathe out, breathe in for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, and then breathe out through your mouth for a count of 8. What that looks like, I'll abbreviate it as, and then, and so the key is the exhale is longer than the inhale. It sends a very important signal to our nervous system. And if you've never done something like that before, if you've never consciously held your breath for 7 seconds like that and had a nice slow exhale, it'll probably feel weird at the start. And that's normal and expected. If you've never done it before, of course it's going to feel weird. but just go slow and go into it. The real magic is when that exhale is longer than the inhale. So even if you inhaled for 3 to start and exhaled for 5, you're getting your way to there. Again, progress, right? Step-by-step progress. We're not necessarily looking for perfection the first time we do something. So if you do that 10 times, that won't take you very long. It'll take you 2 minutes, and you can do that as many times during the day. So it's very powerful to do that before a meal or after a meal or before you go to bed to help relax your body, to help it get into a not stressed state. And then I will just talk about supplements very, very briefly because they can be important for blood sugar control. So there's always more than 2, right? There's always more than 2. There's always like infinite number of influences. But a couple things to consider is when you're seeing information like information I put out or anyone else that you're following on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, is there is a difference between, okay, here's the general information that if you're otherwise healthy, do this and that will help you. That's like contributing to a normal, active, healthy lifestyle. Do these things. These are what we know that's going to help minimize occurrence of, the things that we don't want later in life, the illnesses, the chronic illnesses and diseases. We don't want these. And we know if you do these things, they're all very, very beneficial and they're very protective. So there's that. And then there's also, you know what? My hormones are messed. I do have 15, 20 or more pounds to lose. My inflammation is through the roof. My hormones are a hot mess, right? And if your thyroid hormones are a hot mess, I see Missy just popped down. She's my girl for thyroid. So if that is the case, doing the, let's say, standard recommendations probably isn't going to be enough for you to actually like pull things back and throw you that lifeline, right? Because like sometimes we can do like, okay, you can keep doing the doggy paddle and maybe you'll make it to the shore. Or you can have a functional practitioner like throw you the life preserver and like, let's go, let's drag you in. All right. You can keep doing the doggy paddle. It might get you there. But if you know you're like, yeah, I'm sinking here, that's where you need the life preserver. So supplements are a couple categories. Yes, there's supplements that are just, most of us aren't getting enough from what we need from our food and what we expect ourselves and our bodies to do in a day or on a regular basis. So we're going to need some extra support. So there's the general supplements that are a good idea for everyone. A good multivitamin, vitamin D, get your levels checked, omega-3s, examples like that. When we're talking specifically blood sugar control, look at chromium, look at magnesium, definitely look at omega-3. Berberine is shown to be just as effective as metformin. So berberine, I really like, there's one berberine that has green tea in it as well. So if you're looking for metabolic health specifically and to burn fat, that one's a really nice combination. A good multivitamin and mineral that includes things like zinc, vitamin C, and their B vitamins. Those are supplements that you would want to look at. Should I be taking this? And should you be taking it? I don't know. You're watching a video that I'm doing on Instagram. It's definitely worth exploring. Chromium, what chromium does is on the cells, there's an insulin receptor, and chromium helps open up that receptor so that insulin can do its job and pull sugar into the cell. So chromium, very powerful one. Magnesium, and in my personal opinion, is most women, again, if you're watching my stuff, most women are going to benefit from supplementing with magnesium. Just watch for the laxative effect that it can have depending on what form you're taking. Berberine, great research with berberine. However, it is very effective at regulating, balancing blood sugar levels. So depending on what you're doing, it can actually cause your blood sugar levels to go too low. So with any supplement, check with somebody that this is appropriate for you, that there's no interactions. And if you're already monitoring your blood sugar levels, we'd want you to monitor it when you're taking something like berberine as well, because it's effective, right? So guess what? It is going to lower your blood sugar levels. And we also don't want you going too low, right? This video, the goal is like, okay, manage it. What can I do so I can avoid those blood sugar spikes? We also don't want you going too low. That is not a good situation. So I've dropped a lot of goodies for you today, and our time is up for this mini masterclass. Just want to review the do's for blood sugar control: breakfast with protein, fat, and fiber, physical activity, balance your meals, stress management, supplement where appropriate. Look at the symptoms that you have. Can they be linked back to blood sugar control? So many things get better when your blood sugar is controlled. So many things are better. And if you implement those 5 things that I've mentioned, everything else gets better. Everything else gets better because you're taking care of yourself in a way that your body needs to be taken care of and supportive. And when your blood sugar is balanced, everything else in your body just relaxes and the other hormones start to fall into play. Okay. What we're not going to do is we're not going to drink our calories, right? We're not going to have sugary drinks. We're not going to ignore our blood sugar levels. We're going to learn about it. We're going to dive into it. We're going to pay attention and look for the signs of my blood sugar. Is my blood sugar too high or too low? Is it in the appropriate level? And then I also just want to, if whatever you're eating, just check your food labels. Unnecessary sugar is in like so much stuff, like pasta sauces and salsa and organic chicken broth. Like I remember one time I went to the superstore, I picked up like organic chicken broth and they call it cane sugar juice or something like that. It's sugar. And it's just like, why is there sugar in this? There is zero need for sugar to be in an organic chicken broth, but it's in. So there's sugar in so much of the foods we're eating. So just read the labels, right? So that's another time where you're doing, like you're trying, you're putting the effort in, but it's like, what the heck is happening? Sometimes there's like sugar coming in from other sources that we didn't realize that was coming in. And the only way we do that is by learning and then taking an audit and checking those labels and finding out what's going on. So if you're not signed up for my energy and vitality masterclass, which is Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock for those of my friends in the Pacific time zone, the link tree up in my bio has the link, the registration link. I'll see if I can drop it in here after as well. So if you're not registered for the masterclass, make sure you go on and register for that. We've got some exciting things lined up for it. I know it's going to be great and you guys are going to enjoy it. So thanks for your time and attention today. Any questions, as always, drop them in the comments and I'll respond to you later with those. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.